So from that point to high recession and high recession, you have 1 in the middle, 2 on the sides here, 3 in the back, kind of like pizza slices. And but the reason I'm using round sections is if you look at what his hair naturally is doing from the sun already, he has more depth around the perimeter. This is exactly the opposite of what you would do in a normal highlighting situation, right? You would typically do more of the brightness around the perimeter and more depth kind of at the crown when their hair lays over top and you see all of that burst of color. But for him, we're gonna be doing the exact opposite, and I'm taking rounded sections because essentially his haircut lays really round his face. And now I'm going in and just painting those, like, at least here it's 5 different peaks just going up to create that transition. Just a little bit of tease, just 1, 2. And you can already see the hair is so much lighter here. And now just a straight parting. Clipping this up. And you're naturally you're gonna have finer sections because you're working your way up towards a triangle where it's wider here and much thinner at the top. So it's gonna naturally have a little bit of low light, but some of these shorter pieces don't reach to the lengths of the hair, so it will have no low light at the very, very bottom lengths of his hair, but it's lots of variation through the mid shaft. Just having that brightness in there, but because it's so naturally what his hair does, it's so complementary, and it won't feel like a shock to him. So I feel like it'll look even a little bit more edgy and really cool because he has that contrast there. That'll be my last section with the most brightness. Add your tension, tease a little bit further down. And previous to this, I did about 4 points. So the more points of brightness that you bring in is just the more lightness that you have closer to the root. So 90 degrees from the head is going, every time you're elevating at a 90. So when I'm down here, I'm a little bit lower and then higher, 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 right? So that I can really get the right amount of tease in there, making sure I separate those hairs out so that I have a nice thin section. It's not just a big clump of hair that I have to saturate through because otherwise you won't get the optimal amount of lift. And you can see that I'm gonna do a V section here because I did a W before, so it'll add a little bit of variation. But I'm almost all the way up to his root. But remember, now we're working our way towards the front, so I might want just a little bit more brightness. So all of the same things that you're doing here with a very slight diagonal back to each section and to each painting pattern. And that's the major difference there. But this section, I am just tipping out the very ends. So really, really heavily teasing all of that away and just going in just at the ends because I want that root depth to really show through when he's looking straight on, that you can actually see lots of root depth happening. So we've completed both sides in the back, and I've actually snuck ahead a little bit and completed this side in the front. So he really feels like it's much brighter around his face, and it adds that beautiful contrast with his eyebrows, which I'm really excited about. So you really want to mimic and you really want to remember what it is that you did on that opposite side, so that you can be symmetrical. Gluing that hair down on the ends and really just saturate, saturate, saturate until you can work your way up into your painting pattern. And we have lots of teasing going on, so I can paint a little higher, knowing that when that tease drops down, it'll incorporate more depth right there. When I'm folding a foil, I always want to make sure that I'm folding the edges of the foil right at the edges of the section so that my foil isn't like large and just in the way of my work. So I'm teasing, and I'm still alternating my kind of just straight section and then my zigzag parting. But generally, overall, in this side section, you are incorporating more brightness up higher and quicker than you are in the back. So the back is really where you're kind of wanting to maintain that, just like tipping out the ends and maintaining that depth. super important. And the variation of how close you get to the root from one section to the next is really important. And the finer your sections are, the more that it really reassures you, not only that you're gonna get the optimal amount of lift, but also lots and lots of variation at that root level. Well, anytime you're painting anything or doing anything, I think each section has to have some kind of intention to it, some kind of reason behind it, a thought process that goes into it. Hair is really something that you can't check out of. So I'm ending on that inverted V, and the cool thing is you're gonna be able to see that on each section as like almost like a little star that comes over top. So now that we're traveling through the front of the section, I am going to start with 2 diagonal backs to make sure that I cover this area rather than just going in. And because we want to incorporate more or less root depth, you want to be really consistent with that around the hairline. So I'm just going to follow the hairline with a diagonal back section here first and a little bit bigger of a section. So I really want to just kind of create just about the same amount of root depth here that I did through his sides, or like a really like obvious burst of blonde, even though it is going to be lightened a bit more than everything else because of all of the depth that we incorporated on the underneath. So a consistent amount of brightness through this first pop, not a diagonal back, just kind of square in a W shape. You want to get that really good even amount of lift in the blonde, so making sure your saturation is on point is definitely key. Incorporating just slightly more root depth here. Now through this top section, because I want a consistent amount of blonding to happen with not like a ton of pockets of depth, I always kind of do that first before painting my painting pattern in, because then I can kind of finesse the painting pattern utilizing all of my lightener that I have here below. So every time you're looking at a section, seeing if something's fragile, you're looking at the porosity, you're looking at the color itself, you're thinking about the end result and getting an even result. I did a straight across parting there, so now I have my zigzag parting, elevating at a 90, incorporating more depth at the root. So this one I did a little higher, this one I'm gonna do a little bit closer to the ends of his hair to make sure that I get that variation at the root. So if I even painted it the exact same place that I painted the section underneath it, you're gonna be incorporating more depth, if that makes sense, because you're over directing this hair forward. And then as I worked my way towards the crown, I was getting a little bit brighter, a little bit closer to the root, a little bit brighter, a little bit closer to the root, right? And then I did the same things on the sides in the back, because remember there's 2 sides behind, just behind the ear to the top of the crown, those 2 pie-shaped sections. I work at a slight diagonal back, and that will just naturally work your way around his ear and up to the top of the crown. And then when I come to the front, I'm utilizing 2 diagonal backs to really get around that hairline and create a consistent amount of brightness throughout that hairline. So I utilize that moment to get out all of the tease, because there's a lot of tease happening. So it's great opportunity while you're building the bonds in their hair to get all of that tease out. I want this to kind of feel a little bit bleachy, like a little bit like when the sun does it, you can see some of those natural pheomelanin in the hair. Eumelanin is the blue tones, and pheomelanin is like the orange, yellow, red tones in your hair. So the pheomelanins is what is exposed, and you can see how it has this beautiful gold that is naturally exposed from the sun. So I want to kind of go from that beautiful gold to like a soft, you know, and a pale blonde still, but maybe maintain a little bit of warmth in his toner formula so that it does truly look like the sun did it, and it's just this bright, beaming, like bleachy blonde hair. Love, love, love all that depth in all the right areas so that those ends really pop out. But I'm digging how it's a little bit brighter here and cascading kind of over top, so it has that depth to light effect.